November 1942. A German intelligence officer in Berlin receives a report from an operative in Baltimore. The numbers in front of him do not make sense. He checks them again. According to his source, the Americans have just launched a cargo ship, a full-sized ocean-going Liberty ship, 441 feet long, capable of carrying 10,000 tons of cargo. That is not remarkable. What is remarkable is the date on the previous report. The keel for this ship was laid just 42 days ago. The officer assumes it is a typo. He sends it back for verification. The response comes within hours. It is not a typo. The Americans are building cargo ships in 6 weeks, and they are not building one. They are building hundreds. The German officer does the math, and his blood runs cold. The war, he realizes, is already over. Let me show you the moment the German Navy discovered that American industrial capacity had made their victory mathematically impossible, and why this story reveals something about American manufacturing that still resonates today. The Battle of the Atlantic was, in many ways, the most critical campaign of World War II. If Germany could cut the supply lines between America and Britain, the war was over. No fuel, no food, no ammunition, no invasion force. Britain would starve, and the Allies would collapse. And for nearly 3 years, Germany was winning. Their U-boat wolf packs were slaughtering Allied merchant ships at a terrifying rate. In 1942 alone, German submarines sank over 1,600 Allied vessels. That's more than 4 ships every single day. The math was simple and brutal. If the Allies could not replace ships faster than Germany could sink them, the Atlantic became a German lake, and the war was lost. But the Germans made one critical miscalculation. They assumed that building ships worked the way it always had. The way it worked in Germany, in Britain, in every naval power in history. Traditional shipbuilding was an art. Skilled craftsmen worked for months, sometimes years, carefully constructing each vessel as a unique creation. A standard cargo ship took 8 to 12 months to build in a European shipyard. The Germans knew this. They had studied Allied shipbuilding capacity. They had calculated how many shipyards the Allies had, how many workers, how many ships they could theoretically produce in a year. And the numbers, from their perspective, looked manageable. Even if the Allies worked at maximum capacity, the U-boats could sink ships faster than they could be replaced. It was a war of attrition, and Germany was winning it. Then America did something that changed everything. They stopped treating ships like works of art and started treating them like Ford Model Ts. Let me show you exactly what that looked like. The Liberty ship program was born out of desperation. In 1940, with Britain under siege and merchant losses mounting, American industrialist Henry Kaiser proposed something radical. What if, instead of building custom ships the traditional way, they designed one standard ship and mass-produced it like automobiles? The idea was revolutionary and, to traditional shipbuilders, almost offensive. But Kaiser was not a shipbuilder. He was a construction magnate who had built the Hoover Dam. He understood mass production, standardization, and efficiency, and he convinced the United States government to let him try. The design they settled on was the EC-2SC-1, which the world would know as the Liberty ship. It was not pretty. It was not fast. It had a top speed of just 11 knots, which sailors joked was barely faster than a man could swim. But it was simple, standardized, and designed specifically for mass production. Every Liberty ship was identical. Same dimensions, same engines, same cargo capacity. This meant that parts could be prefabricated in factories across the country and shipped to shipyards for assembly. It meant that workers did not need to be master craftsmen. They just needed to know how to weld one specific section over and over and over. It meant that the entire process could be broken down into an assembly line, just like building cars. Here's what that looked like in practice. In Richmond, California, Kaiser built the largest shipyard in the world. 7 massive slipways where ships would be assembled simultaneously. But the real work happened in the prefabrication facilities scattered throughout the Bay Area. In one factory, workers built bow sections. In another, stern sections, in another, deck plates, in another, engine rooms. Each component was built to exact specifications, numbered, and shipped to the shipyard. When a ship was ready to be assembled, the prefabricated sections arrived like pieces of a massive jigsaw puzzle. Cranes lifted them into place. Welders joined them together. What had taken months of custom work in a traditional shipyard now took days of assembly. The first Liberty ships took about 230 days to build, still slower than traditional European shipyards, but promising. Then the system started to accelerate. Within months, production time dropped to 150 days, then 100 days, then 60 days, then 60 days. By late 1942, Liberty ships were rolling off American slipways in an average of 42 days from keel laying to launch. 42 days to build a full-sized ocean-going cargo ship. And they were not building them one at a time. At the program's peak, American shipyards were launching 3 Liberty ships per day. 3 per day. Let that sink in for a moment. While a German shipyard was carefully crafting a single U-boat over the course of a year, American workers were launching a cargo ship every 8 hours. Now imagine you are that German intelligence officer in Berlin. You have been tracking Allied shipping losses. You have been celebrating each U-boat's success. Your calculations show that Germany is sinking ships faster than the Allies can replace them. Victory is only a matter of time. Then this report lands on your desk. The Americans are not just building ships fast. They are building them at a rate that is physically impossible according to everything you know about naval construction. You do the math again. If the Americans can build a Liberty ship in 42 days, and they have multiple shipyards, how many ships can they build in a year? The number is staggering. Thousands. And your U-boats cannot sink thousands of ships. Not even close. Here is the truly devastating part. The Germans actually did this calculation. In late 1942, German naval intelligence compiled a report on American shipbuilding capacity. They analyzed the Liberty ship program. They counted American shipyards. They estimated production rates. And their conclusion was stark and unavoidable. Even if every single German U-boat operated at maximum efficiency, even if they sank ships at rates far beyond what they were currently achieving, America was already producing cargo vessels faster than the entire German submarine fleet could possibly sink them. The Battle of the Atlantic, from a purely mathematical standpoint, was over. Germany had lost before most people even realized the nature of the contest. But the numbers get even more absurd. Let me show you the scale of what America actually achieved. Between 1941 and 1945, American shipyards built 2,710 Liberty ships. That is not a typo. 2,710 cargo ships, each capable of carrying 10,000 tons of supply. To put that in perspective, Britain, with its centuries of naval tradition and multiple shipyards, built fewer than 500 merchant ships during the entire war. Germany built approximately 1,100 U-boats over the course of 6 years of war. America built more cargo ships in 4 years than Germany built submarines in 6. And each cargo ship carried vastly more tonnage than a submarine could ever sink. The most famous example of Liberty ship construction speed came in November 1942. To demonstrate American industrial might, and probably to terrify the Germans, the Richmond shipyard staged a publicity stunt. They decided to build a Liberty ship, the SS Robert E. Peary, in record time. The keel was laid on November 8 at 12:01 a.m. Workers swarmed the slipway in shifts that never stopped. Prefabricated sections arrived in a continuous stream. Welders worked through the night under floodlights. On November 12, 4 days and 15.5 hours after construction began, the SS Robert E. Peary slid into the water, fully assembled, and ready for sea trials. 4 days, from keel to launchette. The ship would go on to serve throughout the war, making multiple transatlantic crossings, carrying thousands of tons of war material. It was not a prototype. It was not a mock-up. It was a fully functional ocean-going cargo ship built in less than a week. German U-boat commanders at sea heard about this through intelligence reports and literally did not believe it. Some thought it was Allied propaganda designed to hurt morale, but then they started seeing it with their own eyes. U-boat captains would sink a convoy of merchant ships and retreat before Allied escorts could counterattack. They would return to the same shipping lane a month later, expecting to find it depleted, easier pickings. Instead, they would find more ships than before. Fresh Liberty ships, barely 2 months old, steaming across the Atlantic in endless convoys. The German submarine Ace Otto Kretschmer, who sank over 40 Allied ships before his capture, later said that by 1943, U-boat commanders knew they were fighting a losing battle. They would sink 3 ships and watch 6 new ones replace them. It was like fighting a hydra. Cut off one head and 2 more grew in its place. Here is what this meant in practical terms for the war. Every Liberty ship could carry 10,000 tons of cargo. That could be 2,840 jeeps, over 440 light tanks, or 230 million rounds of rifle ammunition, or enough food to feed an army division for a month. Multiply that by 2,710 ships, and you are looking at the physical embodiment of American industrial supremacy. The Liberty ships carried the fuel that powered Allied tanks across Europe, the ammunition that supplied D-Day, and every battle that followed, the food that kept Allied armies fed, the replacement vehicles, weapons, and equipment that meant Allied forces never ran out of anything. While German troops on the Eastern Front were rationed to a few bullets per day, and their tanks ran dry for lack of fuel, American soldiers had so much ammunition they could afford to use it liberally. So much fuel their vehicles never stopped moving. So many supplies that waste was more common than shortage. But there is another layer to this story that makes it even more remarkable. The people building these ships were not experienced shipwrights. Traditional shipyards employed men who had spent decades learning the craft. The Liberty ship program employed housewives, farmers, teenagers, anyone who could hold a welding torch or operate a crane. The Richmond shipyard alone employed over 90,000 workers at its peak, and the vast majority had never set foot in a shipyard before the war. They learned on the job. They worked in shifts that ran 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Women, who had been excluded from heavy industry, made up a significant portion of the workforce. Rosie the Riveter was not just a propaganda image. She was welding bow sections on Liberty ships in California, Virginia, and Maine. The program proved that with proper organization, standardization, and determination, an entirely inexperienced workforce could outproduce the world's most advanced industrial power. The Germans never found an answer to the Liberty ships. They tried. In 1943, Admiral Karl Donitz, commander of the German U-boat fleet, convinced Hitler to dramatically expand submarine production. New U-boats with advanced technology, better speed, longer range. At one point, Germany was building 40 U-boats per month, a rate they could barely sustain, but it did not matter. Even at peak efficiency, even with their best technology, they could not sink ships fast enough. In 1943, the tide of the Battle of the Atlantic turned decisive. Allied shipping losses dropped dramatically while U-boat losses skyrocketed. By 1944, the Atlantic was an Allied highway. Liberty ships crossed in massive convoys, protected by escort carriers and destroyer groups, and U-boats could barely touch them. The mathematical certainty that German intelligence had calculated in 1942 became operational reality. Let me show you one specific example that captures the entire dynamic. In March 1944, the Liberty ship SS Stephen Hopkins was part of a convoy crossing the Atlantic. The convoy was attacked by U-boats. The Stephen Hopkins was hit by a torpedo and severely damaged. Any traditional cargo ship would have sunk, but Liberty ships were built with an understanding that some would be damaged, so they were designed to be almost absurdly resilient. The Stephen Hopkins stayed afloat. Its crew managed to make emergency repairs at sea and limped into port. Normally, a damaged ship would be out of service for months while repairs were maddest. But the Liberty ship design was so standardized that repair depots had prefabricated sections ready to go. The damaged sections were cut out, and new ones were welded in. The Stephen Hopkins was back at sea in 3 weeks, carrying another 10,000 tons of cargo to Europe. The U-boat that torpedoed it was sunk by Allied escorts 2 weeks later and never replaced. That's the war in microcosm. America could repair ships faster than Germany could sink them, and build new ones faster than Germany could build submarines. Here's the thing that should terrify you if you're on the wrong side of American industrial capacity. The Liberty ship program was not even the peak. It was just the beginning. After proving the concept with Liberty ships, America built Victory ships, which were faster and more efficient, then T2 tankers for fuel transport, then escort carriers to protect convoys, built using the same mass production techniques. At one point, an American shipyard launched an escort carrier every week, every single week. The Kaiser shipyards alone built 50 escort carriers during the war. 50. Germany built 4 aircraft carriers over the course of the entire war and never finished any of them. America was launching 1 per week from a single shipyard. The Liberty ship program cost approximately $2 billion, which in 1940s money was a staggering sum. But consider the return on investment. Those 2,710 ships carried an estimated 75% of all cargo shipped overseas during the war. They transported entire armies, millions of tons of food, fuel, weapons, and equipment. They made the invasion of North Africa possible. They supplied the D-Day landings. They kept Britain fed and armed. Without the Liberty ships, the Allies do not win the Battle of the Atlantic. Without winning the Battle of the Atlantic, there is no invasion of Europe. Without the invasion of Europe, the war goes on for years longer, if it is won at all. So that $2 billion investment quite literally won the war. And after the war, many Liberty ships remained in service for decades. Some were sold to other nations and operated into the 1970s. The SS Jeremiah O'Brien, launched in 1943, is still afloat today as a museum ship in San Francisco. You can go aboard a Liberty ship and see exactly what I am talking about. The simple, rugged design, the welded construction, the utilitarian efficiency that prioritized function over form. It is a physical reminder of what American industrial power looked like when it was fully mobilized. Here is my question for you. The Liberty ship program demonstrated that, with the right organization and determination, America could outproduce the rest of the world combined. We built more cargo ships in 4 years than most nations built in their entire history. We did it with an inexperienced workforce, using revolutionary mass production techniques. And we did it while simultaneously building the world's largest bomber fleet, the world's most powerful navy, and enough tanks and artillery to supply multiple armies on multiple continents. Knowing this, do you think modern America has lost that industrial capacity permanently? Or is it still there, waiting to be mobilized again if the need arises? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If this story changed how you understand the Battle of the Atlantic and American industrial might, hit that like button and subscribe for more history that reveals the moments that changed everything. Thanks for watching.